Hello and welcome to the Solace Show. This is the first ever episode of the Solace Show. I am your host, Dr. Robin Donaldson. I'm a clinical psychologist, now a licensed yoga instructor, and I'm also a widow. So today I wanted to tell you a bit about this show because as many of you are probably wondering watching it now, what is this about? Solace. Solace for what? So the idea came about because there are so many people in this country, in this world, that are grieving. And at any moment, at any time, more and more people are dying. And we need to really do a better job at dealing with grief and helping other people deal with grief. So that's essentially the premise of the show. We will be talking about different aspects of grief, different aspects of loss, of death, the things that people don't want to talk about. We're going to talk about them because it's time. And you're never going to have the opportunity to say, oh, I've never dealt with the death of anybody. Of course you have. And even if you haven't experienced the death of somebody extremely close to you or a significant person, we've had communal deaths, right? So celebrity deaths can impact people. Surprisingly enough, they impact folks quite a bit. I still know people that, are upset about Prince dying, David Bowie, for example. So these are things that we will talk about when there's a tragedy. We might talk about it for a little bit if there's something that happens in the news. But on the day-to-day, talking about a friend that has died, talking about your dad, your mom who has passed away and how you still feel about that, we just seem to be socially ill-equipped to deal with those types of things. So one of the things that I wanted to illustrate for you, and if Joe Gamble, if you could please bring up the CDC picture there. So the CDC records how many people die. The latest that they had recorded was in 2014. I think it has to do something with the census. But the number for just 1 year in the United States was 2,626,418 people. That's a lot of people to die. And if we just assume that every one of those individuals had one person that they were close to or one person that was impacted, that's still over 2 million people that are dealing with grief, which again, we don't talk about, which again, we don't handle very well. So to say that this is something that we really need to work on and need some support, need some skills, the numbers right there are what is needed. Now, as a clinical psychologist, I can definitely speak to those pieces, different coping skills that nobody teaches you in kindergarten, although they probably should. That emotional awareness thing, it's extremely important and extremely helpful. So different tips and different things that I help my clients and my patients do, I'm definitely going to be sharing with all of you. I myself am a widow, so I know firsthand what it is like to experience devastating loss of somebody that you love dearly. And how do you get through that? How do you survive? How do you get to the next day? And then I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm somebody that has held the hand of somebody in grief, and I have helped to support. And I know that I don't do it 100% well, but I have a lot of good ideas and a lot of good suggestions of how we can pay it forward, how we can be better supporters for those that we care about that are suffering. So we can go ahead and take that off now. So, again, for this show, my interest is not in telling you just think happy thoughts and everything is going to be okay, because the last time that I checked, that hasn't really helped anybody. You need to do more than just think positively, especially when it comes to grief, when it comes to loss. And so I'm not going to be sugarcoating things. I'm going to be telling it, like it is, how it feels, and you will have the opportunity, because this is streaming, because we have access to social media, to tell me and to tell the show what it's like for you. So, I will definitely give you all the information to be in contact, to say, yeah, right on, Dr. Donaldson, that's exactly, what I went through when I lost blah, 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 blah. Or, no, that's not really how it impacted me. And I want to know that too. Because again, what we talk about here on the show is based off of the information that I have, the experiences that I have, sharing it with you, but I also want you to take a part in this show too, because, as I have said, every single one of you has experienced grief or will experience grief. So nobody is immune to this. So it's very helpful to have that connection. So I do want to hear from you. Definitely know that. The Solace show is sponsored by Solace Club. The name, I know, super creative, but Solace Club is a company, and Joe Gamble, if we could pop that on the screen, is a company that I have co-founded that provides care packages to people in grief. So similarly, based off of my experience and observations of how people help others and how they are struggling, we notice that, yes, a lot of people will send flowers around, the time of the funeral, but then the person grieving a month later, 2 months, 6 months, a year, they're still needing some support. So this is a way that people, especially if they live far away, not in the same state, not in the same city, can provide care packages for people to just show them that they love them, that they are thinking about them. So it's definitely something that is an improvement on how we help out people in grief right now. The nice thing about that website also is that it has my blogs on there, so you can get tips on, for example, during the holidays, we put tips on how supporters can help people in grief. Because again, the biggest response that I hear people say is, well, I just don't know what to say, or I'm afraid I'm going to upset them, or, these types of things. So trying to give people some direction, some focus, a lot of things that we'll also be talking about here. Oh, that's when we were on Danny Vegas Live. Oh, it all comes full circle. So yes, so Solace Club sponsors Solace Show. We will be touching on all those issues that you see there and even more. And so, Joe Gamble, we can go ahead and remove that for right now. And so for today, I wanted to take a couple of minutes, now that we've introduced the Solace Show, you know what it's about, let's get to some meat. 2018, it's a new year. You've probably heard over the past 2 weeks, Happy New Year. My reaction to that is, really? Is it a Happy New Year? Okay, for whom? For a lot of people, it's not, oh, new year, new me. Guess what? There's still old grief. The person that you love, is still dead. So, no, being in grief, the idea of a new year without your loved one, it's not really something that is worth celebrating. And it can be a struggle. There are a lot of people met their loved ones at New Year's or had traditions. And so missing them not only through the holidays, the winter holidays, but now we go to a new year, depressed, sad, not really sure what this huge span of 365 days, what is that going to be like? So it can be a really, really tough time. One of the things that folks like to do around this time of year is to create New Year's resolutions. Now, my own take on that personally is that, resolutions can kind of set you up for failure. So I have a new spin on it. And it's definitely a spin that going through grief has helped me out with. And that is, instead of doing the traditional New Year's resolutions like losing weight or saving more money or, writing more thank you cards, what about resolving, meaning making a promise to yourself, not trying to fix an issue, not trying to, find solutions here, but promising to yourself to take care of you. So I've created a list of New Year's resolutions, and this again is where I look to Joe Gamble to help me out here with the slides, so you can all visualize it at home and write it down if you would like to. Any moment now. Yes, perfect. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Awesome. So these are ideas and recommendations that I have. You can definitely add to it, but different ways to improve this new year for yourself while you're in grief. So first one there, stop comparing. So often we think, well, my grief isn't as bad because, well, I lost my parent, I didn't lose my spouse, I didn't lose my child, or my loss, I'm doing so much worse than my friend Betty, who's also, grieving a similar loss. No. Comparing ourselves does nothing to help us with our grief. It's just another way to add to the self-critical voice in our head that prevents us from really moving forward or healing the way that we could. So the second one, giving yourself permission to grieve. Often we might think, well, during the holidays that made sense, but now it's Tuesday after the holidays, although today's actually Monday. Today's Monday, it's January the 8th, I should be over it. I should be, in a better mood, all these things. I shouldn't still be grieving today because today doesn't make sense to grieve. And so this piece is really an encouragement to allow yourself to grieve, however that shows up, whatever that looks like. Focusing on the self. So this one covers tons of things. Self-care in all of its form. So if that means, making sure that you get 8 hours of sleep, because that has a huge impact on our health, emotional health, physical health, cognitive well-being, making sure that you eat at regular intervals, fueling the body, making sure that you have enough fuel to keep you going from one day to the next. And water, I'm a big one on hydrating. Living in the desert, it's something that we can easily forget about, but it'll remind you with a headache or two if you don't be careful. So yes, 2018, a year to focus on the self. Sounds like a great idea. Dropping the expectations. So oftentimes when somebody dies, we hear from other family members, we hear from, you name it, different websites, different books, this is what you should expect to feel right now. This is what you should do as a grieving, child of somebody who has died, a grieving spouse. So there are all these expectations that we try to squish ourselves into that really don't help us much. Because, what if we don't meet up to those expectations? Then that's another disappointment. 2018, let it be a year where you talk about the deceased. So often we're afraid to bring it up. People around us, supporters, don't know if they should bring up the name of the deceased, but I say do it. The more you talk about them, the better, because they are still a part of you, a part of your life, and talking about them is a way to keep them a part of your ongoing life, the life after, if you would. So definitely encourage you to talk more about them, encourage other people to say their name, to talk about them as well. And then the last one that I put on here is to surround yourself with supporters. There are many folks, they may have been your very best friend, they may have been family members that were, so close, so helpful, but during grief, they may not be the best supporters. They may be some of the people that have been putting expectations on you. They may be the people that are telling you how you should or should not feel, or what you should and should not be doing. These are not the supporters that you need right now, and it is okay to not have them around you as often, and finding those that are there with you, that will just show up, be present, listen, hold your hand, if you need it, those are the people to encourage in 2018. So thank you very much. So again, as I mentioned, these are just some, quote, resolutions for grief for this year. I encourage you to create your own in a simple light. And again, they're aspirations, they're goals, they're things that you're promising to yourself to take care of you. You know, if you don't always get rid of the people that are making it hard for you to adjust, you know, if you don't have a whole bunch of supporters around you right now, that's okay. It's a work in progress. This is a promise that you have made to yourself that you're going to continue to work on. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. And guess what? You're not going to. 2018 is going to be whatever it's going to be. It's going to be good. It's going to be bad. It's going to be ugly. And you'll get through it because you've gotten through everything this far. So what's another year? You know, what are your options? So definitely one of the things that I have proposed for myself is a lot to do with that, focusing on the self, focusing on self-care, because that's been one of my biggest ones. I feel like at this point, 4 years after, and I am still in grief, 4 years after, I've got a good support group around me, and my expectations are pretty managed, but there's still resolutions for grief that I can work on as well. So I look forward to hearing from you about different resolutions that you may have. And so as we get towards the end of our time here on the Solace Show for this month, I wanted to thank you for being here and for listening. And I wanted to remind you that we will be having another show, which, crossing my fingers, we'll be able to have a Skype interview with an author of a grief book that I found very helpful. But you'll have to hold on and wait to hear more. And that show will be February the 5th, that Monday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. And anything else regarding that one? Oh, if you could please put up the image of our social media. I wanted to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. That's the information. Yes, we've got a Facebook through Solace Club, which I'll definitely be promoting the Solace Show through, as well as Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to leave notes, if you want to respond back to us in any way, just use the hashtag Solace Show, and I will be scanning through that to look at and to respond, or even bring the question on the show or the comment on the show for next month, and we can talk about it. So, like I said, I do want to hear from you because you are my audience. You're the ones that are dealing with grief. And if you're a grief supporter, would love to hear from you as well. Things that you've done well, things that have been more challenging. Okay, go ahead and get out of that. Thank you. And so to end our segment today, which my plan is to do this for every show, is that I want to leave you with a grief relief tip. And I think that there should be just a still of that I made that's pretty, yes. And so each month we will have one of these just kind of recommendations, a little something or other to kind of help you, to give you ideas. You know, it's not going to fix grief, it's not going to make everything okay, but it may be just one more thing that's going to help you get through this difficult time of your life as you're grieving and living in your life after. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking to you today, and always remember, you don't have to journey alone. Okay, we go ahead and roll that grief relief clip. Hello, today's grief relief tip comes from yoga. Yoga during grief can be extremely helpful. It's not a panacea, it's not a complete fix for grief or the symptoms of grief, but it is one thing that you can do to help with the symptoms. Yoga allows us to really focus on the present moment, being mindful of one breath to the next, one pose to the next. Oftentimes during grief, our brains are thinking of so many different things. Sometimes our brains even aren't working the way that they normally do, and we get stressed out about that. But at least when we are doing yoga, the only thing that we really have to be aware of is our breath. Even if we just sit on our mat the entire session and breathe, that counts. So for today, I want to demonstrate one pose that anyone can do, either at home, in their living room, in their bedroom, once they get up in the morning, right before bedtime. And it's a position that helps to stretch the lower back, it helps to stretch the hips out. So if it's also, if you're noticing a lot of sore muscles, or if you've been sitting for quite some time and you're noticing just some soreness there, this can help with that as well. So I'll be demonstrating the child's pose. And to get started, go ahead and get into a tabletop position with the knees right below the hips and the wrists right below the shoulders. And then what I would welcome you to do is to place your toes together behind you, and then distance your knees further apart than shoulder or hip distance apart. Now for me, I only prefer to go a little bit wider than hip distance, but some people like to put their knees all the way to a mat distance apart. But for me, I notice that that's too much of a strain on my hips, and that's okay to do, to bring it in closer. So then place your hips back towards your feet and your ankles, and this allows that upper back stretch. And then slowly walk your hands forward on the mat. And then at this point, as you lower your upper body, you can either put your forehead down to the mat, or if you're going to be here for some time, grab yourself a pillow or something soft to place your forehead on. And then while in this movement, or in this moment, really focus on breathing. Because your body is in a different position than you normally are when you breathe, you're going to notice that it feels kind of different to breathe. And so it's going to be very important to breathe into your lower back, more diaphragmatic breathing than you are normally accustomed to. And that's okay. Just notice how it feels. Notice what it's like to breathe when your body is in this position. Now, if your arms get tired, you can also place them behind you like this. And this is also considered child's pose. And that relieves some of the tension off of your upper arms and your shoulders. And you can sit like this. There's no required amount of time to spend in child's pose. So if you notice that you are receiving benefits from it for 30 seconds to a minute, that's great. If you want to extend it out a bit more, go ahead and do so. The important thing is that, again, you are focusing on the breath and focusing on you and in the moment. So thank you very much for listening to our grief relief tip. And always remember, you don't have to journey alone. Thank you.